Boom.
Hi, and welcome to this episode of Rise with Video. I talk with women who are leading in business and raising their profile through media and video. And I ask them to share their top 5 tips, challenges, or sometimes learning lessons in their Rise with Video. You'll not only learn tech tips for making better videos, but more importantly, we'll also talk about the inner game of video and building our capacity to show up powerfully and visibly as women in business. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm honored to live, work, and play on the Lekwungen and Songhees tribal territories, and I'm grateful for the heritage of the land that I'm filming from. Today I'm talking with Cordelia McFadyen, a good friend and a board-certified nutritionist who really knows her stuff, and like most of the women I interview here, has centered her work around helping people with something she's really struggled with herself. Her big why and what she's most passionate about is working with women to help them achieve optimal gut health. Through her practice, Inspired Living Nutrition, she supports women and families to live more healthy lives and integrate more wholehearted eating into their lifestyle. So thank you so much for being here, Cordelia, and sharing all that you have to offer around your personal experience and also your educational experience around gut health. So everyone, welcome to Cordelia McFadyen, who is not only one of my dear friends, but also a real leader in nutrition and specifically around women's gut health. So as you heard in the introduction, she has a background and teaches nutrition out in the world, but more importantly, I think has a real passion based on personal experience. And that's one of the things that I find is most rich in working with people around video is when they have something that's really direct and relatable. So Cordelia, can you talk a little bit about your why? And, I know we talk in the course about your why and how that relates to your work and pushing you, I guess is maybe the wrong word, but or maybe encouraging you to get your word out there with video.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you, Robin. It's always a pleasure to connect with you, and I would just love to be here. And talking about my purpose, you are correct. I suffered from debilitating gut issues my entire childhood. I'm an 80s baby. So, I would come home from school, we would have dinner, and then basically I would lie on the couch watching Star Trek with a tummy ache. And that went on throughout, my elementary years, my junior high, my senior high years. We were going to the doctors. We were, doing the best we knew how to do at that time. And everybody was looking for major digestive issues and concerns. Thankfully, they didn't find any. But what was a part of the conversation that was missing that led me actually to move to England and get the results that I needed was food. No one once to my parents talked about nutrition or what is she eating? What is she not eating? And it was, when I moved to the UK, had some flare-ups, which for me, my main ones were major brain fog and bloating, that for the first time, a doctor said to me, what are you eating? And really sort of blew my mind because I remember thinking in my mind, what are you on about? Like, it can't be this simple. I've been seeing doctors for, at that point, over 15 years. It's food. But anyway, when you're in such a desperate health state and you feel terrible, you're going to do anything. So I kind of cut out some of the big wheat. That's what he specifically called out. So, for me, that was the time I thought, I just won't eat any bread or pasta for a month and see how it goes. And it was incredible in the sense of it was like this veil that was lifting over my head. Wow. And all of a sudden I had mental clarity. And I thought, is this how you're supposed to feel? Is this how you can remember things and control what's coming out of your mouth? And all of a sudden I didn't need my afternoon naps. So it was absolutely my personal experience that sort of kind of got me into this health field. And it wasn't until actually I moved back to Canada and really worked on my gut that I made the decision just before I turned 30 to sort of switch careers. Because at that point I had a really successful career as an event manager in Calgary, was loving it, was so much fun.
Right. Corporate girl.
Great. I mean, it was really fun. But, people started to ask me, what's changing? What are you doing? And I thought, well, what worked for me may work for you. But I was acutely aware that that might not be the case. And that's where I started to look at where can I get education? Where can I get training? And how can I support people to get healthy and understand that there's going to be similarities for everybody, but there's also really big differences of how we're going to get to that path of health. So that was really sort of the initial prompt for me to get into nutrition, was to help myself first. And then the transformation from where I felt to where I ended up was so great. I thought, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one, suffering like this, feeling like this. And maybe it's just a matter of nobody's talked to them about food either. And it might help. It might not help, but it's worth taking a peek at, that's for sure.
And I know that we've talked about niche and deciding who you're going to work with and being really clear about who you're messaging to and who you're speaking to.
Yeah.
Was it your personal journey that really helped you circle and hone in on working specifically with women around gut and hormone health? I didn't mention that as
Yeah.
specifically, but hormonal issues very often, I think, arising from the gut often are really challenging women these days. So was that the needle that was guiding you, I guess?
To be honest, when I first entered the industry, I did not have the sort of business acumen to understand why niching is important and understanding who am I talking to. At that point, I basically was talking to everybody, and therefore I was getting a lot of different clients. And then sort of through that process, I thought, well, I need my work to be enjoyable too. That in itself is
Yes.
a light bulb moment. But then, just refining that, not only do I have a ton of personal health experience as it relates to gut and hormonal health, but this is what professionally I am engrossed in. This is what I'm reading the books, watching the webinars, attending the conferences, talking to with my students. Like, this is what I love. And so it was very freeing for me to get to that point in my own business where I thought, no, I'm going to work specifically with women, and I want to focus only on women's health, and I want to focus primarily on gut and hormonal health. And this is the lane I want to stay in, because this is the lane in which I am an expert, and this is more than enough.
Yes.
This is more than enough.
Sounds of angels singing when there's that kind of clarity, because I can feel a difference when I'm being spoken to, or even online and scrolling. It's the clarity and the people who just really know what they're about that shines through. And this is a really nice segue into the top 5 visibility tips. I ask all of my interview guests to bring some of their top 5 tips or challenges or learning lessons to talk about and share with the audience. And in some ways, it's a peek behind the production window that we all go through when we're doing our videos. Your first one, Cordelia, is about knowing your purpose and really knowing your purpose for each video that you're shooting. You want to talk a little bit about that in your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember feeling very nervous and anxious when I first started, even the thought of even doing public speaking, because at that point, again, coming from events, I was very in control, but very behind the scenes. So obviously, all of a sudden, this transitioned into holistic nutrition. I thought, no, I still have to be back. I still have to, not really share my experience and what got me in here. And then as I developed through my business, I thought, no, like, this is how I can connect with the women who need my support. And so now whenever I do a live or go on a video, I know that the topics that I'm going to be speaking about are going to include, gut health, hormonal health. We're talking probably about personal health advocacy, and we're probably also talking about healthy boundaries to some degree. So whether that be in relation to leaky gut, endometriosis, PCOS, suspected food sensitivities, it all is the same for me. And I can easily go between lanes because they're all interconnected. So no matter what I'm talking about, I just know that those are going to be, sort of the 4 big, pools or
Pillars.
I pull from. Yeah, the pillars, exactly.
Yeah.
And so in that way, I never feel fluffed, because I know I'm not all of a sudden going to be talking about cardiovascular health or men's health topic or something. Like, it's very specific for me, and I know it well enough that I have no hesitation about being able to talk about it on the fly.
And I love the way that you termed it. You said staying in your lane. And I think that's kind of a macro way of looking at it, but in the way that you referenced it. But in each video, there's the same kind of advice where if you stay in the lane of that video and don't start, if you're talking about hormonal health, you don't start straying unless you're just, doing a sort of off branch thing as an intro, but staying on the spine of that topic. And then when people think of you or that topic, there's a link, and because you haven't been muddy or all over the place with the topic or with the content.
Well, and that's what also I find is what keeps people engaged. If you're going to talk about something, just talk about that. Because if people are coming to your video based on the title or description, and you're maybe not leading with that, or you're kind of all over, like, we need to capture people's attention and be very clear and concise. And if you're, I think we've all maybe landed on a sales page where, we saw something on Facebook and we're like, this sounds great. And then we go to the sales page and we're like, what are you talking about? Like, there's no
a disconnect,
consistency, right? And so I think about that with videos. Like, what am I going to talk about? Talk about that, and that's it. And don't overcomplicate it, because you can often do that when you're new to video. You can start to maybe ramble on and be like, I need to show my expertise, so I'm going to talk about everything. And it's like, no, you said you're going to talk about why to eat an apple a day. Just talk about apples and why they're important, and be done. That's it.
That's right, because people did not come there for oranges and bananas. They came there
No,
for apples. I
exactly.
love that,
Exactly.
Cordelia, because,
Yeah.
and I say this to my clients a lot of times, especially around the length of video. It's funny because the metrics around length are always shifting. It used to be that long videos were great, and then it was like
Yeah.
long videos are the kiss of death. And
Yeah.
now it's weird that longer videos on YouTube, there's an algorithmic advantage to having people stay on your YouTube videos for longer. So it's always shifting in terms of the ideal length. But I think exactly as you said, if you're sticking with knowing what your purpose is, it will help define your length. And
Yes.
people
Yes.
really need to stay engaged. If it's not engaging and you're not keeping them on that spine, then they won't finish the
No,
video, and your
no.
metrics, if that's what's most important to in terms of counting or tracking your results, then you're not, it's not completing the job. So
No. And Robin, you brought up a great point, which again, when I started doing videos that was not even on my awareness, was the fact of that every platform is different. Is it an IGTV? Is it an IG Live? Are you on YouTube? Are you on Facebook? Are you on Snapchat or TikTok? Like, what are you using? Because all of those have different algorithms and different lengths that are going to, dictate your essential visibility to the audience that you want to connect with. So they're not all the
right.
same at
That's
all.
so true. And how to make it brand appropriate as well. My
Yeah.
message wouldn't fly on TikTok, so I wouldn't put it
Not
there.
even on TikTok is the same thing. I'm like, no, I just know, stay in my lane. I know Instagram. I know this. This is what I'm doing.
Now, and you've offered a couple of tech tips as well here, which I really like, because it's always good to have, what I love is a little peek behind the production window. And sometimes you'll see people's hair on fire behind the production window, and that's part of the learning process and trial by fire, isn't it? But I know that you've had some lessons around sound. So can you talk a little bit about your sound experience? And you're also talking about minimizing distractions in this second point.
Yes, absolutely. So for me, I've made my office really, in terms of actually in my house, it's away from most noisy things. Thankfully, I do have quite a lot of space around me. So I'm not in a city where I have to be mindful of construction or neighbors. So, I mean, those are different things you'd have to consider. If I were, say, living in a condo, I absolutely would befriend my neighbors, above, below, and kind of just maybe
That's a
ask
really
for
good
a little bit
point,
of
actually.
levity if I was doing an important interview. But for
Yeah.
me, it's kind of funny. I just have a Post-it that I put outside my door. And so my partner knows, like, when the Post-it's on the door, like, you do not knock, you're not watching TV, you do not have your ringer on your phone. It took me a couple of times to learn, like, oh yes, do not disturb function on iPhone. Like, use it,
Right.
minimize if you're using your computer, minimizing open emails, minimizing anything that's going to have like a notification ding. And then just
I know, I
really
just heard
making
one of
sure-
mine.
Yeah, yes, right. It's so good. And then of course,
And my
just
phone will probably ring.
and that's okay. It's okay too,
Right?
right? It's like these things happen and you're like, right, next time, check this, right?
I like the way you said it, though. You said minimize distractions and do your best. And I also love that you touched on that, Cordelia, because stuff is going to happen. And so to roll with it and to be flexible. And I know that we've even had interviews where things have gone awry and we just laugh about it and move on. And
And to
that's
be
part of the
totally
process.
honest, from like a mental health perspective, I expect something to go wrong. So if it doesn't, I'm pleasantly surprised. And if it does,
That's
I'm
right.
like, this is tech, like this is fine. Instead of, I used to go into everything being like, okay, do not disturb. I've done this. I feel great about my checklist. I'm a list person. I'm like, perfect, nothing's there. And then if something would happen, I'd be like, ah. And now I'm like, I do the best I can. I add things all the time. It's technology.
Right.
I expect a gremlin to appear. And if it doesn't, I'm like, perfect. But for me, just like shifting to that nothing's going to happen, but just being like, something probably will happen because we're real life and real humans living a life. And Amazon might drop something off and that might set my dog in a loop. Like,
Exactly. That's right.
happen,
Right.
So
That's right.
So for me, that's been really important just to help with that, anxiousness potentially, especially if you're new, you just feel like, ooh, it's hard to get out there. And then if something happens, you just can easily like, whoa, get knocked off. And it's like, just expect something will happen and understand that in itself is like completely normal. So.
Exactly. And that actually is I'm going to hold off, but that's a lovely tease into the fourth point that you have, which is all about emotional balance and emotional hygiene. But let's stick with the third tip that you had was around having a hardwired connection. So if you're doing a live or if you're doing an interview or a Zoom or something, so you live out in nature, out in the woods. And so that I can imagine is very important, being a little bit more of a rural location. Can you talk a little bit about that, Cordelia?
Yeah, absolutely. So probably in the fall when I was instructing a lot for the college, I was relying on my Wi-Fi, and then one day we had major issues and I couldn't get on. And so it happened. Thankfully, it was sort of the latter part of the class. So there was only 20 minutes remaining. So it was very easy just to be done with it. But after that, I thought, nope, I need a hard wire. So I've got my Wi-Fi modem like literally in my office. And then my partner did me a huge favor. He's got this hard wire. He's like pinned it to the wall. So now I always have the hard wire connection whenever I'm working on Zoom or doing videos or instructing or working with my clients. And then the other thing is I got very familiar with how to create a hotspot on my iPhone, so that if Wi-Fi something goes down, I just push my data. I just, tether to my iPhone, make sure that's plugged, and I can still operate. So unfortunately, it came because of a little bit of a fear, but now I've got my hard wire in, and I know that I have my iPhone if I have to tether to and just use data if it has to get done. So with the hardwire internet and my iPhone and sharing the hotspot, I feel very confident.
You're covered.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really feel, yeah, absolutely.
It's funny. I haven't had that experience in the last couple of years. They must have done some sort of a broadband increase or something. But I remember the frustration of it. People would be freezing, and yeah, the hardwire thing. So for people who don't know, I'm thinking some millennials might not even know what we've been such a wireless age for so long. But that's where the little thing sticks into the router, and it's actually your computer is wired right into your router, so that if wireless does go down or something happens with the Wi-Fi, you're still good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that it's a wonderful tip. And that's especially if you're hosting a large meeting and you're the linchpin or the hub for the whole meeting, it's really important to have that.
And that's the great distinction too,
quality.
Robin. Yeah, and that's the big thing too. It's like, what is your role in the video? If you're leading something, if you're the interviewer, you really need to be mindful of everything, because there's an expectation that you're going to know how to figure it out if something goes wrong. And that's true. Like, you really do. So
I'm going to throw this one in. I always like to throw in a couple of bonus things, but one of them is that if you are hosting a large event, to have somebody helping you with the tech, because if the chat room is going, and if I was hosting one a couple of weeks ago where it was almost 200 people. And thank goodness I had somebody there, because I had to turn the chat off. It was flying by so fast that I was getting distracted. And if I would have been doing it by myself, I would have just been sucking my thumb and rocking in the corner by the end of it. And we don't want these things to be stressful. We want them to be fun. So
yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great tip too.
Okay. Well, speaking of, this is a great emotional. I love the word that you use, the word emotional hygiene, because I always think of hygiene as the dentist and
brushing your teeth. Yeah.
Right. But the idea of staying on top of our emotional balance, and particularly when we're going on camera. Talk a little bit about that one, because I loved even the wording that you had for this one.
Yeah, for me, I think particularly over this past year, where we've kind of moved more onto online and more virtual, and particularly at the beginning where things were very stressful, I was just acutely aware, and I think this is because I've unfortunately and fortunately had a lot of health issues in my life. So I thought, when this started, I don't know how long this is going to go on for, but I know how I don't want to feel at the end of it. So
I love that.
So I was just really aware of, okay, there's going to be days where you're feeling overwhelmed and you're not going to want to do anything, and that's okay. But don't let the emotions override my purpose. And so, because honestly, Robin, I mean, my spirit animal sometimes is a sloth. I could just sit and lay on the couch, and I could just watch Netflix and consume Netflix and eat and chill and do all that things. But then really, would I be feeling great about anything? Like, no, I wouldn't. So it was that balance of, for me, the emotional hygiene is, yes, allowing myself to have those days. And maybe it's a couple days where I'm just like not available, and I'm not replying to email. I'm not even going to wash my hair. I'm just going to stay in my pajamas with my dog, and we're chilling out. But again, like, the purpose for me is, I'm here for women. I'm here for gut and hormonal health. And when this kicked off and stress levels went up, I just thought, I need to be more on than I've ever been. And I need to be more available, because I know how to navigate this. And most people won't. They will just think, I'm so stressed, I don't feel like doing anything, so I'm just going to not do anything. And then that can go on and on and on and on. And that's where it's like, you need to have that emotional hygiene and that emotional intelligence to go, yes, not feeling great today. There's things to do, and I need to get up and I need to work out. I need to make a nice, nourishing breakfast, and I'm going to do what I can today, and it's going to be great. And then just do it, even though you might not feel like it, because sometimes your feelings will not lead you to where you want to go. And sometimes
Yeah, to a dangerous neighborhood.
yeah, exactly. And sometimes
The
when you get
bad
to the end of that
kids.
path, you're like, why am I here? How did I get here? So
Right.
yeah, it's honoring the emotions, but also saying like, you have a place, but I've got a purpose and I'm getting this done. So
I was just about to say that because I know that for me, Cordelia, this last year, the challenge, the times that have been the most challenging, I've kind of said, do I really need to be doing this? Do I really
yeah,
want to be feeling at this stage of my game like a startup? Because really, that was what last year felt like, doing everything for the first time. It was a little, a lot of things were tried and true, but some of the things were unfamiliar. And those few times, I could probably decide not to do this, but every single time I just doubled back and said, but no, I'm called to do this.
mhm,
This is my why. And I think that that purpose will pull us through the
yeah,
times when we don't want to do it. Or,
yeah,
my thing is about shyness. Here I am
yeah,
talking about visibility through video, but I like my video to be on my own terms. And
yeah,
so, making that a part of my game. I love that your spirit animal is a sloth. Mine is a patient. Mine's probably a turtle.
yeah.
But it's doing things in rhythms that work for us
Yes,
that, but I love that
yes,
you pulled out that why piece, because that is really, I think, the thing that will pull us through the eye of the needle when it does get hard and we do want to quit and we think, what's it all about in
yeah,
this business
yeah.
world? So
And a common
awesome.
exercise I do, and again, this is coming back from my upbringing of not feeling well and car accidents, is I would always put myself in the future. Like there's going to be a time when this is over, so like how do I want to feel at the end? And so naturally when this started, my mind was like, where do I want to be in a year and 2 years? And if I allow myself to just do everything that my feelings are dictating, how am I going to feel at the end? And then ultimately for me, I was like, I'm not going to like how I feel at the end. I'm not going to like if I just sit on the couch and don't do my exercise and don't do my meal prep. Like it might feel cozy in the moment, but that is not true. Like I'm not going to feel great about that. So that's where that balance is really important, and understanding it's different for each of us. But yeah, for me, projecting myself into the future is like, okay, if I repeat 90 days of sitting on the couch and watching Netflix, where am I going to be? Oh, I'm not going to
Right.
like that. I'm not going to like that. So that is like a really important exercise for me. Whenever anything stressful or overwhelming comes up, how long do I want to take to feel, like overwhelmed? Because I certainly do, and I allow myself that time, but there's a timer. When it
I
ends,
love
then
that.
you
Yeah,
go.
it's right. And when it's bling, it's like over time to get off the
Yeah,
couch.
it's
And
like, get up, let's
yeah,
go. Yeah,
that's
absolutely. And
awesome.
and do it yourself, because that's the other thing. I mean, not being able to go to the gym and maybe having these external sources of people to pump you up and cheerlead you. Like for me, I was like, I knew it was an internal job. So I was like, okay, I know what I have to do and I have to self-motivate on this aspect. So yeah,
And you're doing such a great job of leaping from point to point, because the last one that you had is about self-care. And one of the pillars, you talked earlier about pillars or
yeah,
points, but one of my pillars is about self-care and honoring our bodies. And I think that going on camera, there's nothing, really for me, I have always been more health conscious when I know I'm going on camera, and
yeah,
I've just stopped fighting that about myself. I thought, hey, whatever works in terms of self-care. So
yeah,
you mentioned it
yeah.
as well. So talk about what that means for you in terms of your work and going on camera.
Yeah, for me, it means definitely sleep. Like getting really good sleep so that I'm bright-eyed as much as possible. I don't have like massive bags, which are okay from time to time, but like if I'm showing up on video, I really want to put my best face forward. So it's making sure that my nutrition is key. I'm not going to have any blood sugar pangs because I'm not eating irregularly. The other big thing I've learned too is, not that I'm a huge consumer of dairy, but I do like my lactose-free cheddar and things. I won't have any cheddar. I won't have any dairy at all, just because I noticed, and I've been taught that, can produce more phlegm and lead to that, like, and you don't want that.
Right.
So really just being, and hydrating, and not just hydrating the day, like making sure you're hydrated a week before and then having a little sip, you know?
Well, the other thing that happens
Hydrated.
too is when we get nervous, our vocal cords will constrict, and so it's often a surprise for people that they feel like they're amazing before they go on camera or public speaking as well in front of a crowd, and then as soon as they're in front, the red light goes on, or they see the people in front of them, their physiology changes, and so that's where you do start getting because they
Yep.
were fine 5 minutes ago, but
And I have to
any
remind
of
myself too, something I do before I do interviews, like I kind of like learned this from Tony Robbins, but I'll change my state. I'll like bring energy up and think of like, why am I doing this? Why is this important? This is a great opportunity. And then I'll always deep breathe. Like I'll always like belly breath. And then I have to remind myself doing that because I've noticed sometimes doing interviews, I find all of a sudden I'm a chest breather and I'm like, no, breathe deep.
And that's funny
Slow.
because lots of times I think when we're thinking, the energy doesn't make itself all the way back down to our bellies. And yeah, so interesting.
Yeah, so for me, it's like breathing and just, being calm, not speaking too fast. Because sometimes when you're excited, it's like, da, 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 da. And it's like, no, just breathe, talk, it'll be fine. Like yeah.
And that is one of the things I admire about you. You've actually got this lovely balance, speaking of emotional balance, but there's a lot of energy that you bring to the world. And, I can see that amping that up and, because especially over camera and especially over Zoom, energy has a tendency to be subdued a little bit. So bringing, not overacting or performing or anything like that, but bringing as much of our physical energy to the space
Yeah.
as we can, I think is really powerful. But you also have that blend of chill and calm, and I just love being in your presence in that way, especially when we go out. It's like, Cordelia's got the ground.
Thanks. Well, and that's the other thing too, Robin, is at the end of the day, I just think just be myself. Just be myself. Don't try to be like all of a sudden I'm on camera, like I've got to sit like I'm a news anchor or something. Like just having a conversation. Having a conversation
Right.
with you, I'm talking about things that I love. So sometimes I'm more excitable and other times I'm just more chill, right? Like I think that sometimes we can put too much pressure on ourselves to sort of be a certain way. And it's like, yes, certainly like the tech pieces, speaking clearly, those are very important, but be yourself, naturally be yourself, because that is exactly who you will attract. And if you're trying to be too much of someone else, then it's not going to be authentic and it won't feel good to you. So
It won't, and it certainly doesn't land with the audience. I've seen sometimes where, people will do sort of more of a campy kind of thing, and it can
yeah.
be attractive at the outset. But I think a full interview of 20 minutes of somebody, having full on amped up energy and being in that sort of performery space. Oh God, I can't imagine a fresher hell.
No, and I can't watch stuff like that for too long. It's like
Right.
it's just too frenetic. I'm like, nah. I wouldn't want to be around someone like this in person for too long. So again, like I don't want to jive
Seek
with
them
that
out
on a
online.
video, right? Yeah.
That's right. Exactly. And I love that we started with purpose. We're kind of finishing with around being purposeful around self-care and being grounded and knowing really, the purpose for us doing, taking our message to a wider space in the first place.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that I love that you've done in this interview is you've just bopped from piece to piece, and winding up with self-care. I really do think that really does epitomize what I think about you and your message and what you stand for. You've talked about the way that you've had to model it, even though I still will laugh about that. My spirit animal is a sloth, but really having to be on top of our own mental game, especially when there is stress, and the whole link between body, mind, and spirit, and particularly how it sets a ground for us to rise and take our message to a wider level. So how can people work with you? I know that you work with people one-to-one, and you're also building an online course. Do you want to share a little bit about how you work with clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've actually recently gotten back into offering some one-on-ones. I've just been really sort of, occupied with some other projects with the college and things. And then when this sort of kicked off, I kind of had the inkling. And then with the extra time on my hands and things, I thought, you know what, I want to get back to supporting women one-on-one. So I'm happy to be offering that program again. And it's so nice as well because I have the ability to connect with women all over the world, right? Which is
Right. Yeah.
so cool because again, the other thing that's fascinating to me about women's health is that I can speak to a woman in Canada. I can speak to a woman in Arizona. I can speak to a woman in Australia. And it's a lot of the same messages in the sense of, issues that they're experiencing and challenges and obstacles. So I'm just like, listen, doesn't matter where you are. We seem to have a lot of universal blocks when it comes to accessing our health. So it's beautiful to talk about. So happy to be doing the one-on-ones. Also, yes, creating, I've got a new Holistic Nutrition 101 course that's about to launch with Pacific Rim College Online, which, to be honest, it's a bit of a silver lining for me because this project is over 2 years in the making. And when I was approached for this opportunity, I remember the question was, why do you want to make this course? What is the purpose? And, thought about that. And I thought, this is the course that I would love to see in junior highs across the country, because this is the 101 that every human needs to take. This will just provide you with, the nutrition, the lifestyle, and then also kind of what I call the mental mastery, which is more the meditation, the mantras, the breath work, actually embodying and understanding what mindfulness is, instead of this term that's thrown around a lot without really people like, what is mindfulness? And, I'm just thinking, even with the stress when we were talking, I thought, just if people can, take some deep breaths before a meal, gets them out of that, that nervous system state where the blood goes to your extremities. And just by bringing that back, it's like we want the blood back in our digestive system so that we can actually digest our food. So breathing is, again, just one of those easy things. So the Holistic Nutrition 101 course is really just, it's just a gift that I've put my heart and my soul in, and basically my experiences, for better or worse, to equip and empower people to understand that you are your own health expert. Yes, it is your responsibility to curate a health team around you, because no one is expected to get well on their own, but it starts with you. And in order to really encompass and embody that, let's take you through the foundational and fundamental pieces so you have a language when it comes to nutrition. So I'm very, very excited for that to go out into the world, and just to see it in households, and just to know that people you don't have to be a nutritionist. You learn this, you implement this in your house, you change the meals that you're making for your children, for yourself, for your partner, like all of this.
And feel it inside. I know that any of the changes that I've made that you've suggested have been, cutting out wheat. I noticed the difference after a couple of weeks. So yeah, it's brilliant. And Cordelia, wouldn't it be amazing if that was taught in junior high? If kids, I just think of how many, my experience, I had an eating disorder. And if I would have had sound nutritional, solid information as a young woman, I know that I would not have veered off the wrong path in terms of honoring my body. And so the work that you're doing in the world is so important. It was such a joy to be able to dig in. And one of the things Cordelia and I were talking about before this interview is that we look forward to going into a little bit more of this gut health thing. We were talking about visibility and video, and that was the topic for today. But I'm really excited to dig in more into the microbiome and into some of the things that we've been hearing a lot about. And I know you are just an expert on this, so we've got more to come.
Thank you. Yes,
is there anything else, Cordelia? Yeah, right. Is there anything else that you want to share, or anything else that you want to say to complete our interview today?
Really, honestly, Robin, I love you. Thank you for having the conversation. And for those watching this, just know that you're doing a great job. Chances are you're not giving yourself credit for all the wonderful things you're doing for your health. So instead of shoulding on yourself, start to make a list of all the things you're doing, and start to view them in a different way. Because again, working with women's gut and hormonal health, everyone thinks they're not doing anything for their health, and chances are you're doing a lot. So give yourself credit now, and understand again that health, and particularly nutrition, you're not meant to figure this out on your own. You are meant to have help. So, feel empowered to bring people on, and people like myself, and there's a lot of other great nutritionists. We're here. We've dedicated our life to this. I've dedicated my life to women's empowerment through gut and hormonal health. So that would be my final message.
I love that. And what a way to finish. I actually felt my shoulders go back a little bit when you said that, because I was like, yeah, I am killing it for, doing all of us have, not to bring the pandemic into things too much, but, it has been a challenging time. And, I love that one of the things that you were talking about offline is that this has been a really effective year for you, because because you've done these 5 things. And I think the most important one being about the emotional hygiene and then letting that trickle into self-care. So what a way to finish. Thank you so much for that, Cordelia, and for all the wisdom and information that you're leaving us with.
Oh, thank you so much, Robin. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks for being here and staying right to the end of this episode of Rise with Video. Keep in mind, I'm always looking to work with committed and conscious women business leaders to help them create quality video brands. So if that's you, check out the link in the show notes and let's book a virtual coffee. You can catch other episodes on our YouTube channel, Rise with Video. And if you like this video, hit like and share it with your friends. Again, thanks for being here, and we'll catch you in the next episode of Rise with Video.